Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode. 0.9 seconds after the last one of Surviving the Survivor. This is the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. We wanted to get reaction to lead counsel for both Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson's Daniel Rashbaum interview that we just completed literally fractions of seconds ago, and best guest here to help us do that. How we're going to do it, the COE was trying to explain to me in the half second I had in between shows, but I didn't fully understand what she had to say. R. Timothy Jansen. He is a partner in the firm Jansen Davis. He's handled complex civil, administrative, criminal litigation, first as Chief Trial Counsel for the Secretary of State of Florida, and then he also was 5 years as a federal prosecutor. He knows Tallahassee the way Jared Ross knows Tallahassee, I guess. Jared Ross is a high school acquaintance of Charlie Adelson, having graduated with him back in 1995. He was a longtime friend of Danny Markel and Wendy Adelson. Jared is a two-time graduate of Florida State University, having earned both his bachelor's and Juris Doctorate, aka law degree, from FSU. He currently resides in Tallahassee. He's been there almost 30 years, I think, and he's an attorney and lobbyist, and most importantly, he is from New Jersey. Again, we wanted to get reaction. Disney nerd, I'll take a lot of comments here. Oh my God, that interview was very intense and amazing. Again, I want to just give a huge shout out to everyone that helped me kind of put this together rundown wise, as we say in TV, in terms of the types of questions and the order. The COE always by my side, helping out. Space Coast on the West Coast is a wizard with all things editing. Steve Cohen, of course, booking a lot of these best guests, as you see right here. And the mods. Can't do this without the mods. The mods step in so many ways. It's hard to explain. Tim Jansen, I assume you just watched that interview with lead counsel Daniel Rashbaum. Of course, Charlie Adelson convicted, sentenced to life in prison, and now he will be representing Donna Adelson. He made it clear that waivers were signed. What do you think of what he had to say?
Well, it's interesting. I like Dan. I think Dan's a really good lawyer. I still question why he went public on a trial that is pending. I know there are bar rules against speaking publicly about a case. I know he mentioned that Georgia went on shows, but I think Georgia went on shows after the trial, as there wasn't a trial pending. But saying that, I understand, and you listen to what Dan had to say. He was complaining about these podcasts and people forming opinions, and that they could never be jurors because they're biased. But yet he came on here for what purpose? Was his purpose to make us unbiased? Was his purpose to answer questions? Was his purpose to try to make Donna look better? I think it was a combination of all that, because some questions obviously he couldn't talk. But I think on some areas he then did open up and talk about facts of the case that were favorable or were favorable to his defense. So you don't see it very often that a lawyer would go public with a public trial coming up. I give him credit because he's a smart guy. There's some things that I made some notes that I think are questionable, are inconsistent with what the facts and the evidence will be. But that was interesting, and I think some of the people had some great questions, and you could see a couple times Dan stumbled, and he got flushed on one question where he had to read a response. And whenever you have to get an ethics opinion, you got an issue. You got an issue when you have to consult with an ethics lawyer how to respond. So I'm not sure what Dan's goal was, but I think it certainly was entertaining to the audience.
And we'll get back to some of your notes, Tim, and what you've done prior to high-profile cases. 1776 daughter, Jared, obviously want your thoughts. She's asking, did Rashbaum achieve his PR mission? What say you, and what say you about what he had to say?
Well, a couple things. No, I don't think he achieved his mission because I doubt anybody's mind changed. To Tim's point, why was he on here? It wasn't to make us unbiased. It was to try and get his bias for his client. So I don't think that many minds, if any, were changed. The one thing I do want to say, I've read a lot of the comments, and I saw people post on your social media before you interviewed him about, I can't believe Joel's letting him on his show. I can't believe he's giving him a platform. I disagree with those comments, and I wanted to say it publicly because you're doing your job as a journalist. You've been telling one side of the story, and in my opinion, and yes, I am biased. Everyone knows it. They've heard me on here a couple times now. You're telling the right side of the story. But it's only the right thing to do to let him, if he's willing to, come on and tell his side of the story. So to those that think Joel is doing a disservice to the Markels or to anyone else, and again, I think everybody here knows, where I fall on the side of this case. I don't think that that's the case, Joel. I think letting him on was good. My biggest concern, and it because we I told you and I've told Steve this, is make sure you ask the tough questions, and I think you did. I think you pushed back on him several times, which was good to see. So that's a long way of answering that short question of whether he achieved his PR goal. No, he did not. And I just appreciate the fact that you held his feet to the fire and you did ask some pretty tough questions of him.
And I appreciate you saying that. And for full disclosure, I bounced some ideas off of Jared, who's a very smart legal mind and knows the case and knows Danny, may rest in peace, and Wendy, and obviously went to high school with Charlie. So it means a lot coming from Jared. But I just want to make a quick point myself about that. So a couple things. I consulted with not like to go over editorial stuff really, but consulted with the Markels about whether they'd be okay with me doing this. Now, if I was Dateline, who's going to have Daniel Rashbaum on, they would never do that. And if I was back in traditional media, I wouldn't do that. But this is what I consider to be advocacy journalism. But he is the lead counsel in not one, but soon to be two very high profile cases. And I just don't know how you can rationalize, and I'll get hate mail, and that's fine. I just don't know how you can rationalize not interviewing an attorney who is leading both cases on the side of the defense for two high profile cases, especially when he approached you and offered to do it. It would be silly not to do it. So that was my decision-making there. From Vicky, wow, was he using your show as a sounding board for his thoughts on his defense strategy for Donna? If so, he should rethink. I'll be honest, I have to go back and watch it. It's all a blur. I know he had a read at one point, and I have no idea when that was. I have my notes in front of me, so I'll have to look at it. But
it was when you asked him about whether he consulted with Donna about fleeing.
Oh, yeah. That's Jared. I mean, that's a dicey situation for him, isn't it?
I think so. She clearly says on that tape that she talked to Dan, and he said, with everything going on up there, I don't know if you'll make it out. So, Tim, you may be able to answer this better than I could on whether or not there may be some sort of violation of the Code of Professional Conduct. But I don't think now he didn't take any act in furtherance of her actually fleeing, but you're telling your client you may want to get to the airport.
Yeah, Tim, break that down for us, because I was going to say we're not attorneys, but I'm the only dumb that didn't go to law school.
Or a smart one.
He's on that tape, literally, or Don is on that tape saying that Dan basically said it's time to hightail it out of there. And I think I asked the question, could he potentially be called by the state as a witness? I mean, where does this all lead, this part of the case?
Well, that's a sticky issue. If you know your client has a warrant for their arrest, you can't do anything to encourage them to flee as an officer of the court. Now, you have to take this in totality of circumstances. Does anybody know this case more than Dan? Probably so. Did Dan see and hear everything in the trial? Did Dan see all the evidence against Donna in the trial? Did Dan see Georgia stand and say, "Stay tuned"? Did say the investigation's still going? When did that conversation take place? Did Dan have reason to believe she was going to be charged? Did he give her information where to go that didn't have extradition? We don't know. If he didn't violate the letter of the law and violate his ethics, it sure gives a bad appearance of him as a lawyer instructing someone to leave, even if they didn't technically had charges at the time. So here's the problem. Does the defense call him as a witness to explain what he said to her so it doesn't look like she was fleeing? Does the state call him as a witness to explain his conduct? Because maybe it may not be privileged. Or third, does the court on its own move to recuse him? Because if that tape is coming in, which I believe they're going to play, does it give a negative inference to the defendant that would penalize their defense with that lawyer representing them? Because you don't want something coming back on appeal that it looks like the lawyer did something bad, and it's going to be a negative influence to the jury. There are a lot of combination of things there that's problematic. Now, did he do anything? Who knows what he told her and what she said? He may have told her exactly right, but it sure gives the appearance of impropriety or something that doesn't sound right. And he had to go and talk to an ethics lawyer, which he properly did. And he may be completely right, but it certainly doesn't look good. And I think that's going to be a tape that the state is going to play at trial.
Jared, do you think Dan really believes himself when he says that he believes Donna is 100% innocent in all this? Or is that just something a lawyer needs to either say or believe, force himself to believe in order to be able to defend that client?
I can't get into Dan's head, so it's hard for me to know. There's just so much out there that makes it very difficult for me to believe that as a rational human being and as what seems to be a very bright guy and a good guy, that he truly believes that Donna is completely innocent of this and had nothing to do with it and is the great, loving, polite person that he, kept saying that she is. I started to get this like thou doth protest too much feeling about how often he kept saying he likes Donna. And to an extent, I get it, where he talked about, she kind of reminds me of my own mom. I mean, there's definitely, look, I have a mother from New York, from Brooklyn, with that New York accent. I get it. But at the same time, it just was a little much. You hope as the defense attorney that he does believe his client is innocent. Otherwise, he should not be representing her. But it doesn't seem like that's possible.
Tim, by the way, just so everyone knows, the COE let me know that behind the scenes, Space Coast and some of the mods and she are trying to cut some clips already from that interview in order to play on this show in a few minutes, but it's going to take a few minutes. From PhD in nutrition, that's a good thing to have a PhD in. I could use some help since I had a sleeve of saltines for lunch today. My kid's sick, and I don't know, there's something about saltines that are so good. Tim Jansen, this new defense, so I have to let this digest. I'm too close to it right now, but basically there's a double extortion with Charlie, and now he's like, well, I'm going to use that with Donna, but it's a totally different defense. How is it a totally different defense?
Well, first of all, at the beginning of your conversation, he talked about the defense, and he said he didn't give it out there. He didn't do any media, and he said it worked brilliantly.
I wrote that down
to figure
too.
out, how did it work brilliantly? He was convicted within 2 hours of the charges. You notice he mentioned consciousness of guilt. He was already ferreting a defense of, oh, no, that's not consciousness of guilt. And then you hit him hard with, well, who travels on a one-way ticket? Nobody.
To Vietnam, of all places.
Yeah, and who travels on a one-way ticket after conferring with their lawyer when and where they should go? But he did put out there I think he basically told us Donna's going to testify because he mentioned something and he goes, you're going to hear it from her. So we know that Donna's going to testify. So
is that a mistake, Tim? Is that a mistake?
Well, I don't know yet. I don't know his defense, but
it was with Charlie.
But listen, his whole defense theory is still got the same premise. You have to believe that Lewis and Sigfredo were able to organize, plan, finance, and commit this murder for someone they didn't know where he lived, and then they took a chance of extorting these people. That's not believable to start with. And then think about it. If that is her case, all right, when Donna's on the stand, Donna, once Lewis and Sigfredo were arrested, why didn't you and your son go to the police and tell them about this extortion? Because they were in custody. Why didn't you go to the police? I disagreed with him when he said they tried to interview with the police. No one contacted them. What happened when Georgia tried to interview them? They hired a lawyer and they were going to take the fifth, and they had that hearing where the judge was going to hold him in contempt. So Donna and Harvey were never going to cooperate. I just find that problematic.
And
then
the whole thing about go ahead. Sorry.
Well, the final thing I wanted to say was it was interesting. Why didn't they tell Harvey? Well, they didn't tell Harvey because they said Harvey would go to the police. Why would Harvey go to the police? Because he didn't know what Donna and Charlie had done.
Yeah.
And they certainly couldn't let that happen. It would expose them.
You know, I've been doing this for well over a year, probably 2 years, and I'm still lost on so many angles of this case because it's so convoluted. But KCL says it sounds like Rashbaum is going to go with the defense of a single extortion and not a double extortion in Donna's trial. Jared, I know you had a point you wanted to make, and I wanted to ask you a question, Jared, but go ahead first.
Oh, I was just going to say that Dan kept saying that they did talk to the police before or after the memorial service, and they hightailed out of town after the memorial service. They were gone the next day. The memorial service was a Sunday. I remember it very well because I was there, and they were gone the next day. So they were not waiting around to talk about, to talk to the police, and it's preposterous again.
Yeah, it's by the way, misdemeanor OG, how do you do these marathons? News is a training ground for torturing yourself. And I tortured myself for 20. I honestly will go home tonight and feel like I did not do enough today, but that's just my mother's voice in my head. So Carm, if you're listening and you want to call me later and tell me I did enough today, that would help me quite a bit. Jared, the question I was going to ask you, and Tim just alluded to this, that it looks like Donna will take the stand. Is it going to be dramatically different to see an older woman who's got a gift of gab? I think there's no doubt about that. She knows how to talk. She doesn't, everyone's like, Donna's going to die in jail. I think that woman has 20, 25 years left in her. She's a strong Brooklynite. I mean, she's not a weak person, but our people, they're going to dress her up with, glasses and a sweater and a little bonnet or whatever the hell you put, whatever. Is it going to sway the jury in a different way when they see a sweet old lady? Is my bottom line question on the stand.
I don't think so, because they're still going to play those tapes and they're still going to read those emails. The email that you put in front of Dan, that is, hey, you need to compare what you're reading in this email to this woman you see right here. It's the same person. That's not a rational human being writing that. Now, I'm not going to say she's insane or anything like that, because then, she could try and use an insanity plea, but she's not. She is not a sweet old lady, and they will be able to show that. I'm really, if she does testify, and Tim, I picked up on that as well. I do think he kind of gave the impression that we would hear it from Donna. I am very much looking forward to a showdown between her and Georgia, or her and Sarah Dugan, because you've seen it when Wendy has been on the stand and there's that adversarial kind of back and forth. It will be even better between Georgia and or Sarah and Donna. I can't wait for that.
I'm seeing some of these clips behind the scenes. We're going to play them in a moment, but to Space Coast specifically and the COE, if there's any way that we can tweet and or put these out on Instagram after the show, I would really like to do that. So I'm just thinking ahead so we don't have to do double the work, but we'll play those in a minute. This is not to feed my ego. Trust me. My ego. Do I have an ego? Yeah. But does my mother beat it down and out of me every single day? Yes. Teresa. And so does my wife. And so do my kids. And so does my dog. Do you think Georgia, Tim, is going to watch this interview with Dan? They're wanting you to tell her to watch it. But is Georgia the type of person, is she going to watch this? And just in terms of sort of due diligence, to see what Dan said and try to anticipate what could be coming?
Well, I think that's right. I think Georgia or somebody in her office would be watching. I think clearly this was publicly advertised, and I know there are a lot of listeners and subscribers who are probably friends with Ruth, and Ruth might be calling the victim witness coordinator, letting them know that, hey, did you know that Donna's lawyer is going on the show tonight? So I think, of course, they're going to listen and gain whatever they can, whatever information he's putting out there. I wouldn't be surprised if the state doesn't file a gag order in the future to prevent the defense from going public, talking about the facts of the case. I think that's probably going to come pretty quickly, and I think Judge Everett will grant that, because really the parties shouldn't be talking about the facts. They shouldn't be talking about the facts of the case. And if you're not talking about the facts of the case, why are you coming on the show? And if you're coming on the show, talk about the facts, and you're doing what you shouldn't be doing, is trying your case in the public.
Well, Tim, have you done this prior to high profile cases? Do you go on and talk about the case? It is a little unusual, right?
In 38 years, I've never done it. Most lawyers I know don't do it. The Clenny case we've talked about. That lawyer did it, and I criticized him for that because I think that was inappropriate.
Yeah.
And they did file I think they did file a gag order once you start disparaging the victim. But the bar rules preclude you from going and trying your case with the purpose of trying to influence that adjudication or influence that jury. What other purpose would a lawyer trying a case go public for? I mean, you do the normal, hey, he pleads not guilty or she pleads not guilty. We're going to vigorously defend this case. We believe he's going to be found innocent. That's fine. But when you start getting into the specifics of the case, and denigrating witnesses, he attacked Magbonawa again multiple times. Well, Magbonawa probably is going to be a witness in this case. Maybe, I don't know. Is Charlie going to be a witness? Is Charlie going to come in and testify for Donna? That'd be an interesting concept.
There's no conflict there. I mean, I know they signed the waivers, but there's, at the very least, Jared, doesn't that seem weird if Charlie's called?
Oh, I think it would be weird, but I totally get what Tim is saying. And if Charlie were called, I'm sure what he would say is there was no conspiracy to between any of us to kill Dan, so that therefore my mom is innocent. But we already know one jury didn't believe Charlie, so it'll be very interesting to see if he is called.
Tony Wilcox says, I think Rashbaum just made the prosecution's job easier. Here's a piece of sound. Believe it or not, Space Coast somehow turned this around. No idea what it really is, but let's listen. Let's watch. This is from the show that just ended. Now the question is
why they see them through the lens, but the reality is they don't know Donna Adelson. They haven't been in a room with her. They haven't spent time with her. They don't know what type of person she is. And so they're assuming certain things. And many of those things are just completely false.
Can you give us an example? Can you give us a couple of examples?
Look, I've spent a considerable amount of time with Donna over the years. She is caring, loving. She is probably the most polite client I've ever had in 25 years of doing this. She's bright, but not analytical. She's kind. She's someone I like. she's someone I care about. I would go so far to say that. And that's odd for me in representing a client.
There you go. Talking, Jared, singing Donna's praises. By the way, before you answer that, let me just get a grassroots movement. Keith Morrison is one of my idols for many reasons. Guy's the coolest dude alive. And I want him to voice the beginning of my show. Dennis Murphy's pretty damn cool too. Could everyone in STS Nation just tweet at Keith Morrison to come on our show, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where he just, again, it just sounded like Doff, protests too much. We've heard the tapes, we've seen the emails where she talks about gibbers and all those other things. That's not a loving, kind person. Now, I know, and he was right, in the throes of a divorce, people say and do things that may not be rational. But that doesn't excuse the drastic language and things that she said that she wanted Wendy to do and suggested that Wendy do. It does not portend with the same person we're talking about. And you're right. Most of the people on here, I have been in a room with Donna before, but I don't know her. And I would say probably 99% of the people, maybe there's a couple people in the chat that have and do know her, but you're going to have a hard time convincing 12 people that she is this sweet, loving woman and not the person that wrote those emails or is on those wiretaps.
You got two lawyers, one who is a lobbyist, for full disclosure, doesn't practice law, but put those triple Qs like you see with Jody, and I'll keep going to the bottom of the chat to get them to Tim and Jared. Tim, back to your point about you're thinking that Donna's going to testify. Katie got checks from Donna. I'm guessing she will testify. Agree or disagree, Tim, Joel, and Jared? But Tim?
Well, I think he's going to mention a conspiracy, right? So who's going to testify about the extortion? Who is going to testify that Donna was told about the extortion? Either she's going to have to testify about it, or Charlie's going to have to come and testify he told her. There's no one else. And what I will say, what I do agree with wholeheartedly with Dan, is every defendant is entitled to a trial. Every defendant is entitled to a presumption of evidence. Of innocence. And I believe that. I believe that all the way through, no matter the good, bad, or the ugly clients. And Dan is correct. He doesn't need to worry about STS people. What he needs to worry about is those jurors going in there. He needs to make sure those jurors can keep an open mind. A lot of those jurors are probably not going to be on this show. But I do believe in the system. I believe the system was right the last time. He believed his client was innocent, and that jury didn't buy it. And I just don't believe they're going to buy it again. But I admire him for defending his client. I disagree with him coming here publicly and doing this, but that's just a personal. I would never do it. But I respect his rights and his abilities as a lawyer. You don't kill the messenger. It's the message that's the problem. The facts are his problem. It's not Dan. Dan's a great guy, smart lawyer. It's not Dan. It's just the facts are bad. And as much as he likes Donna, and as much as he wants to see Donna, the facts just don't demonstrate that Donna. You look at the tapes when the bump, you look at all the calls, you look at her emails. What he is describing is not what she was living those years when they did not know they were being recorded, right? They didn't know they were being recorded by the FBI. That's how she was acting. That's the real Donna. That's the Donna that's on trial, not the loving
Tim,
one that he knows.
Tim, I have a question for you, if you don't mind, Joel.
Not at all.
One of the things you asked Dan was if he was surprised at how quickly the jury came back, and he said no. When he talked about how he truly believed his client was innocent and that they put up a great defense with a great strategy. So Tim, and one of the things you and I know we learned in law school is when the jury comes back that quickly, it's not good for the defendant. So
yeah,
wouldn't he have been shocked? They came back so quickly if he thought they did such a great job?
It all depends on the trial. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're right. I've had them come back quickly, but I knew because I knew the state had failed on a couple things, and I knew their key witness. So when they came back quickly, I was comfortable. But normally, if they come back quickly, yeah, it's not good for the defense. It's not. And he didn't seem to be surprised by it.
Yeah.
Jared, one of my first questions to him is, Charlie Adelson gets convicted in under 3 hours. Why the hell would Donna want to hire him? What is going on here? Do you think it has everything to do with a speedy trial?
I think that's part of it. He doesn't have to prepare as much as another attorney would have to. He knows the facts. Yeah, there's going to be some different discovery. The phone, which Dan kept saying there's nothing on the phone. I'm sure Georgia and her team probably disagree with that, and we'll find out at trial. But I think that's probably a big part of it. And there's a comfort level too. We heard Dan talk about how much he knows and cares about Donna and his worked with them for close to 10 years, or I guess really it's close to 8 years, because he mentioned that it was 2016 when that report was leaked, and they figured they had to hire an attorney. But 8 years is 7, 8 years, a long time to know someone and get comfortable with them. So I'm sure there's that comfort level too. And there's also the arrogance that she believes she can either manipulate her way out of this, which we saw in those tapes where she was trying to manipulate her way out of things or get information from the officers. But it's a combination of a lot of things. It's the arrogance, the comfort level, and also probably the speedy trial as well.
Annie K, does it seem to others? Jared, I'm going to toss this right back to you because I have another question for Tim in the on deck. Does it seem to others as though Dan was using his visit on STS to test the waters on his defense of Donna, apart from being down on most of us?
I don't know necessarily if it's to test the waters on those of us that were watching, but maybe it's to kind of get it out there. Again, none of us are going to be sitting on that jury. There's no one likely in this chat. There's probably a few. I mean, I've seen a few of my local Tallahassee friends pop up here on the chat, so they may get called. Most of them are attorneys, so they probably would not get on the jury.
Shout out y'all. Shout out to the
that's
y'all.
right. Hello, y'all. Good to see you. But another story I'll tell another time is I actually was called for jury duty at a time during one of Magbanoa's trials. So that was really interesting. That's another story for another day. But none of us are going to be on the jury, so I don't even know what really floating that would do, unless he does read the comments and maybe he's going to go back and tweak some of the things. But I think it's more of he's just trying to get out there in the public and get some good PR for his client.
Dreamscape, question for Tim. If Donna was your client, would you recommend pursuing a plea? Would you be looking for a deal? It's tough, though. We've talked about this because she's 73.
Yeah, it's a really difficult position. And I really feel bad for Dan, because it sounds like Dan has built a relationship with her that's more than just the attorney-client. And
Tim, what would the plea be?
Well, there is no plea, because Georgia and them believe she was the impetus for this crime. It's a murder. She's going to make her plead to murder one, and that's going to be minimum life and sentence prison for her. There's no deal to be given. I guess if she could give Wendy, but that doesn't seem to be in the offering. It's like representing a friend or a friend's kid. It's really tough because you got a relationship there, and it looks like he's built a relationship with Donna and the family that it's somewhat affecting his judgment, that he's not as neutral and objective as he should be, because he says, I really like her. I really care for her. And I think that's genuine, but that's also difficult when you're giving counsel to a client that maybe you don't give them what they need to hear. You tell them what they want to hear. And I always tell my clients, listen, I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Good, bad, and the ugly. And sometimes when you have a friend or a family member, that's hard to do. And whether Dan is in that position now, just judge it by his comments about Donna and the family.
Tim, right back to you. I'm not going to pull it up because I want to read this comment for Jared in a minute from Christine in Hawaii. When do you think this will go to trial? He sort of evaded the question. I tried to ask, will it be April, November? When do you think it actually gets underway?
I think they're looking at May. I think May is when they want to try this case. That's what I'm thinking. And that's just an educated guess and some information I was told, and I don't want to disclose it, but I think May is the time.
And Tim, someone just asked about a gag order.
Yeah.
Could someone like Judge Everett see this interview potentially and say, or Dateline and say, I don't want you guys talking anymore. It's going to taint the jury pool.
I think it's simple. All that Georgia has to do is get a transcript and put on here. He's talking about the facts of this case and talking about things that potential jurors could be seeing this, or it could be on social media. We don't want to lose jurors because they've seen the defense lawyers say something. And the judge, in all cautiousness, no more talking about the case publicly. You know the Florida bar rules. We try cases in courtrooms. We don't try them in the media. And that's been the way the law has been for as long as I've been a lawyer. It's changed recently with social media. Lawyers are feeling they can try their cases on social media, Instagram. It's just troubling that we're going there because, as Dan said, this case should be tried in a courtroom by neutral jurors, and a decision should be based only on the facts, not because what someone heard on a social media or a podcast. So,
understood. To Catherine, to Jared from Catherine, how do you think Georgia will prove Donna helped plan all this? Maybe she was just a mother who believed her son that she adored when he said he was extorted and just helped him anyway, he said. And let me just, add the caveat here. And Rashbaum made a point here. I don't think there is many direct connections, but when you, again, to use his phrase, when all the puzzle pieces come together, it sure looks like she's behind it, but there are not as many direct connections with the people who perpetrated the actual killing.
Well, circumstantial evidence is good evidence. And there is a ton of circumstantial evidence. Dan admitted that they're on these wiretaps and they're not talking like regular people. He nitpicked with you on what code is and what isn't code. Look, everybody knows that when you're talking in code, what you mean is you're trying to talk around things and not be direct. Maybe there was no actual, Morse code, or you didn't have a sheet that said this means this or that means that, but they were talking in code. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And maybe it's not the literal definition, but they were talking in code. So how is she going to prove it? She's going to use a lot of that same evidence we've seen. She's going to use the same evidence about how she hated Danny. She was, very, she was very obvious about how much she hated Danny in those emails to Wendy. And yeah, I think to the second part of the comment that you made, I think that's going to be a big part of the defense, is that she was told by her son that he was being extorted, and is the loving mother who always gets involved in everybody's life and wants to come to the rescue, that she did whatever she needed to ensure that Charlie was protected. So, and that's my friend Betsy Burgess right there.
Oh, there you go. What's up, y'all? Betsy Burgess,
an attorney here in Tallahassee.
But Jared, on that premise, if they thought that they were extorted by Sigfredo and them, right? Why are they talking on code on the phone? Do they think Sigfredo and Luis are recording their calls? You think they're listening to them? There's no reason. If that's really what they thought, they were being extorted. Yeah, I can understand.
Exactly.
On the phone, you don't need to hide it. Public place, I agree. But on the phone?
Yeah, it's completely irrational. And again, we've said it many times, it's preposterous.
Yeah. Betty Burgess, a friend of Jared Ross here. Did Dan actually, Tim Jansen, suggest that Donna bought a one-way ticket to a non-extradition Vietnam for vacation? Or did I hallucinate that? I mean, I know for sure, even though I'm in a fog, that I pushed back on that. But I mean,
You
talk
you
about
did.
bad facts, Tim Jansen.
Not only did
That
he
is
say that,
idiotic. I mean,
you
moronic on their
you
part.
called him on it, and then he admitted that he had done that in the past, but he didn't explain why you would buy a one-way ticket. It's not just traveling, right?
Yeah.
It's the conversation she had with her son. It's the tape recordings. It's the whole lead up that she's saying her lawyer said you might have time to get out. Then she buys a one-way ticket, but she buys it to a place that doesn't have extradition. She calls her neighbors
After
under
also
the
talking about whether she should talk to Wendy about visas and
right.
things like that.
And then she's also talking about killing herself. So does this sound like a woman that's just leaving to go on a pilgrimage to Vietnam? No.
Man.
And I disagree with him completely. I think the judge is going to give the consciousness of guilt inference instruction to the jury. I think they've satisfied that element.
From PSS, our friend in Philly, does he, Dan Rashbaum, not have any awareness of how Donna comes across, whether he likes her or not? She comes across as completely insufferable. Jared, does he, he says basically that we have our blinders on. We're only looking at one side of the story, but is Dan being as open-minded as he should be in regards to his, at least the behavior of his client?
He's going to have to work on rehabilitating her in front of the jury, because they're going to hear again all these tapes. They may see some of the tape and the footage, and there's just so much out there about her attitude and the way she comes across. It's going to be very difficult for her to come across as this sweet, loving old lady. So I think, yeah, maybe we do have our blinders on, but that's because we've seen all of this stuff that the jury's going to see or hear. And we're not going to see her sitting in a living room with her grandkids and hugging on them and loving on them, or having cocktails, or I guess Coke Zero or Diet Pepsi with Mr. Rashbaum. So, which, by the way, you either drink Coke or Pepsi. Most people don't drink both. So just
That's
saying.
exactly right.
I'm a diehard Coke guy, by the way. Diehard Coke.
I had to stop drinking sodas because I was drinking so much. But let me tell you, if I went to a restaurant and someone said, "Is Pepsi okay?" the answer was always, "Is Monopoly money okay?" It's Coke all the way. So
let me tell you something. I'm a Marriott Hotels guy because I have points through them.
Oh, yeah.
They're Pepsi. I might have to switch hotels. I was going to have a talk with the COE about that. I am not the one. Thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate this. I found it insulting that he was disparaging of YouTubers and their audiences. We come here for the truth, and that is not what we got from Rashbaum. But Jared, everyone in STS Nation, I know Tenton Quarantino, whatever his name is on here, was making fun of me because I asked about someone in Salt Lake. But the obvious point I was trying to make, everyone in here is a potential juror, right?
Yeah, if you live in the United States, and you are 18 years old, you can be called for jury duty.
Right.
So everybody's a potential juror. But I don't know that he was trying to be disrespectful to YouTube watchers or listeners. I think he was just saying that we don't see his side of things, and that's why he was on this show. But at the same time, he's got to understand that there's a potential that these are the same people that could be hearing your case, either this one, which again, like I said, most people in here are not going to be jurors, but another case down the road. So we are normal people.
The COE giving me instructions. Here's something else. They're doing this, and I don't know how they're even doing this, but let's listen to this piece of sound here.
Good sound.
Excellent sound. It's reverberating in my ears. Let's not do that.
The only thing it affects is I'm a big believer in the system. And in most trials, a jury comes to the trial and they know nothing about the case. And what they're presented with is the evidence of the case, where the state or the government, in this case the state, has the burden of proof and has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. In this case, the difficulty is that it's been tried in the media for 7+ years. And it's very hard for people to come to the case with that presumption of innocence. I think that was the most eye-opening piece to me in the last trial, the trial with Charlie. And it was depressing for me, to be honest with you, as someone who's worked on both sides and believes in the system and does this because the system is so important. We have the greatest system, I think, in the world. But it's based on having a vigorous defense with a presumption of innocence, where the state is not a dictatorship, where the state has to prove its evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And for me, it was depressing to see all the jurors, not the jurors we had, but all the potential jurors come in there already with an opinion, based on not one piece of evidence. Just
So that sounds like a constitutional law professor, Tim Jansen. You're shaking your head. Why?
I have a problem with that because I've tried high profile cases. I mean, really high profile cases. And you know that people have formed opinions. So when you say I was shocked that people formed opinions on a high profile case that's been in the public, trials are public. People are allowed to see what's going on. For him to say he was shocked that a high profile case, people had formed opinions, it's just not reality. Maybe he's never tried a high profile case before. That may be. But when he knew he was taking that case of Charlie Adelson and he didn't think he's going to have people in this community that had formed opinion, his whole job during jury selection was to ferret those people out. But he waived that job. He gave that to Dubin to do. Now, he said he worked with him, fine. But on a high profile case, yes, people form opinions. And I can recall a case, I got to change a venue from here to Pensacola. And the judge goes, Tim, no one's going to know anything about the case. He asked the juries when he started, has anybody heard or read anything about this case? There was like 200 jurors, 150 raised their hands in Pensacola. So, and he looked at me and then, I mean, that's high profile cases. People form opinions. And these days, you should know that going in. So when he said he was disappointed, he should have prepared for that and tried to ferret out those people. And it sounds like he did. Oh, hopefully he did.
Yeah, because he even said he said not the jurors that we had, but the jurors that over 100 jurors came in. First of all, you knew Tallahassee is a small community. We're a university town. The reason Tallahassee is the capital, and we all know that state government's very important in this city. But let's be honest, Florida State University and FAMU really are a huge reason why Tallahassee has a population to begin with. A law professor from a top 50 law school in the country was murdered. People are going to know about it, especially people that live in that community. This case has been on Dateline. This case has been all over the internet. There have been podcasts about this case. People in Tallahassee are going to know about it. So to act incredulous and like shocked that, people came into that courtroom and knew about it. I got called for jury duty and knew about a case because I had read about it in the Tallahassee Democrat that was nowhere near as high profile of this. Now, I didn't know who the defendant was, but I remember hearing the story because I live in Tallahassee. It's just how it is. Do you think people are shocked that people know about Donald Trump's criminal cases? I mean, they're high profile. People know about them.
Hey, Jared, how long you been in Tallahassee, Jared?
For the better part of 29 years.
Okay, in 2000, the FAMU bombings. Yeah. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that was a high-profile case, and I moved the case to Pensacola. And that was Pensacola on the FAMU bombings. I mean, Jesse Jackson was coming here. They were closing FAMU. That had national exposure. And I knew that people were going to form opinions. And I called people up to the stand. I said, well, what do you think? She goes, oh, he's guilty as hell. And I got her excused. But, I mean, you have to understand, high-profile cases bring people out.
And that's also why you have challenges.
Right.
You've got the super sticker from Esther. I appreciate the interview to confirm my guilty opinion isn't biased. Rashbaum is testing theories with our YouTube community to determine what sticks and what definitely won't. Tim, this super sticker has been hanging around for a while from Brown and Beachy Vlogs. Can an appeal attorney use this interview to clear Donna later? I hope this doesn't get Rashbaum in trouble, but go ahead.
No, because none of this is before the jury. What he said is not before the jury. And the only way you get an appeal is if you, I don't know how, I guess I didn't understand the question. What Dan said here tonight is not going to be for a jury to consider unless you get somebody on the jury who watched the show and then they found out later they lied about watching the show. And then that juror somehow tried to bring in what Dan said, right, on this show into the jury box. That could be a problem. That could be a problem.
Get me those triple Qs, questions, QQQ, so I know what it is, like Les Noyes did. Tim, back to you. How does a defense attorney ethically proceed if they believe their client is guilty? I imagine that has to happen every day all over this country.
Every hour. You clients never come in and say they're guilty. I always tell my clients, don't tell me what you did. I don't want you to say anything. Let me read the police report. Tell me what you're accused of before they say something. Very rarely do they ever come in and say, I did it. Sometimes they'll say, hey, man, just get me the best deal you can get me, right? And I have found in 38 years of practicing, both as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer, what is in the police report and what your client tells you, it's usually somewhere in the middle. The police report's going to be so damaging, and then what the client tells you, so what the person probably did, and it's sometimes they didn't do anything, they get the wrong person, but it's usually somewhere in between. That's a good ballpark to start with.
And Brian Auxier, hi Joel. Evening from Westfield, New Jersey. I know it well. It is infamously known as the hometown of John List. He was a family annihilator. I believe he's one of the first family annihilators. However, with that said, my good friend Bill Bloom, my doubles partner in high school, and Rob Crozier, two of my oldest friends, both live in Westfield, New Jersey. Shout out to them and to New Jersey. Jared, I know you're not the practicing attorney here. Are you planning to attend this hearing Monday? Tim, by the way, are you going to be able to cover that live with me? Screw that.
What time is it? It's 10:15?
It's 10:30 in the morning. I need you at 10:15. You have to cancel out all your plans that morning.
Well, I just want you to know, Donna's not going to be there, right? It's a case management. The judge is going to say,
sure she's not there? You sure
100%.
she's not?
They don't bring
Yeah,
her.
they said Zoom.
They don't. No, I doubt they bring her.
Yeah.
They don't normally bring her. Dan will probably be by Zoom because it's just a case management.
Still
I imagine Alex will be in the courtroom. I'll try to make my calendar work. I know I have a sentencing in federal court in Gainesville in the afternoon.
This guy's a real lawyer, but I'm gonna make him do analysis. That's gonna be, by the way, live Monday, 10:15 a.m. One way or another, we'll get it done. And then we're doing a show 7 p.m. Monday with I don't even know who, John Singer, Jonas Spilbor, and someone else about Donna's day in court. We'll figure it out. The COE mentioned this. I'm mentioning it again. The live watch party this Friday night, we're doing the Markel story once again, and we're gonna watch it together. How the COE's organizing it, I do not know, but you do have to be you see there, members only, Patreon or YouTube. You got to deal with the COE on that one. Tim, but okay, so she's not going to be in court. I get that. But what should we expect on Monday?
I think Alex will show up and say he's part of the team. And I think they'll probably set a trial date. I think they'll set it for May or June. And that's what I think will happen. I'm guessing,
Mother of Men. Like that name. Do you think Wendy was the driving force, and will she be next? Jared Ross, and Jared is a former friend of Wendy's. They're still Facebook friends.
I think I haven't checked in a little while, but I will. Yeah, I mean, I think she absolutely was a driving force behind this. I know that there's a lot of people, and I know Tim has some questions about her guilt as well. But there's just, to me, the big thing is everything about Jeff Lacasse. And I know that Dan tried to say that there was stuff that Jeff said in depositions that didn't come in, but he testified. You had a chance to ask him about that at trial and didn't. But there's just everything Jeff Lacasse said, the texting or calling Danny to find out if he was going to be in town on the 18th. There's just so much there. And then other things that I've heard from other people, which are not things that I, that people would have asked me not to repeat. But there's just a lot of strange behavior that leads me to think that she definitely had something to do with this.
I tend to agree. Angela, why is Donna having another case management hearing 1 week after this one? I don't think that's the case. Originally, it was scheduled for the following week. They bumped it up, and that's because, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the case hearing. I don't think there's going to be another one unless they schedule one, but they're bumping it up because Donna's got here's a Yiddish word, spilkis, which means ants in your pants in Yiddish, and she's got ants in her pants. I don't speak
remember, the judge wanted to move it to like February.
Yes.
And the Scalzo says, no, Judge, we don't want it. We want to go quickly. And then we had the weather that closed the court for her day, right? So this is the next case management. And the judges keep these on case managements to keep them in the docket. They want to keep them moving. They don't want it just sitting there. They want to move cases. This is a brand new case. And they could say, Judge, we want to have a case management in 60 days. The judge would grant it. But I don't think that's what the defense wants. It seems to me they want to proceed, and maybe it'll change. Maybe it's going to change because now she's in general population and she's getting her toothbrush. She's getting a shower, as Dan said. Maybe she wants more time now that she realizes she can now survive and thrive, and she wants to be better prepared. We'll see. No one really knows.
She's like, wow, this is like Vietnam here. I get a shower and a toothbrush. Let me hang out. I was just going to read that comment. Ned Smith super sticker, COE. You got some bad timing with those pulling those comments away. Nothing. Someone's asking about the Holocaust ring here. I actually did mean to get to that. I don't think he would answer that. I think that he would probably say, for those who do not know, Wendy Adelson never returned the Holocaust heirloom, which is a Markel family heirloom. So, I think that he would probably say that's a family matter that he is not aware of. But I could ask Dan. I'll hit him up with a text. Tim Jansen, is it normal for a lawyer to talk on the phone every day with their client? He is speaking to her every day. I know that for a fact because I had a phone conversation with him. Well, not for a fact, but Donna called and he told her that he was going to call her back, and it put me in a weird spot, or she would call him back. But do you talk to your clients daily when you're getting close to trial?
Well, if you're close to trial, yes. If you're in the weeks in between coming up for trial, yes. If you haven't even set the case for trial yet, no. Like I said, because of his relationship with her, it seems like it's more than just a lawyer attorney. It seems like it's almost like a family friend or a relative. And so, yes, he would be talking to her. But daily, that's a little much. But she trusts him and he likes her. So I don't know if he's billing by the hour. I don't know if he's got a flat fee. But he's taking her calls. That is abnormal to talk every day unless you're in trial or on the verge of trial.
Jared, I'm going to read this email again. This is an email from Donna Adelson to Wendy, and she writes, this is about a year before the murder, 2013. She writes, you have a job to get done in a very short time frame to accomplish it. If you dressed your kids up in Hitler Youth uniforms and brought them down here, I could care less if it was an act of defiance, and I would show Jibbers that he's not in control. If your children are baptized, it doesn't make them Christian. Ben and Lincoln aren't really pirates because they dress up like Jake the pirate. It's an act. You got into this mess with Jibbers by being so compliant and non-confrontational with him. I do agree with me. I mean, because I read this, and my mother, my own mom's a Holocaust survivor. This is not like typical. Look, I go on rants. Everyone knows that. I would never go on a rant like this. I mean, this is a picture, a glimpse into, in my opinion, an unhealthy mind. Am I being too harsh, Jared Ross?
Not at all. Especially knowing who the family is. Look, and I sometimes read the comments too much on things. So I know people got very upset over the fact, Joel, that the first time I was on, we talked about being Jewish too much. But there is, in a Jewish family, there are certain things you don't joke about and you don't make offhand comments about. And the Holocaust is one of them. I'm a grandson of Holocaust survivors. I would never in a million years, it doesn't matter what we were talking about or thinking about or how mad I was, there would never be a thought of my mind of bringing up Hitler Youth uniforms, costumes, whatever. That is not normal, especially, it's not normal for anybody. It's not normal to bring that up, and maybe I'm a little bit sensitive to it because of the world events right now and everything else. But at the end of the day, that's not normal for anybody, but especially for a Jewish family who I guarantee you they have relatives that are Holocaust survivors, because we all do. It's just a fact of life. To bring that up, I mean, the whole baptism thing, okay, that's one thing, and that's kind of stupid as well. But the Hitler Youth thing, like, I mean, when I first heard that, it really got me, and it is not normal at all. It is a sign of some sort of a psychosis in my mind.
Well put. Tim Jansen, your take on that, again, from a legal standpoint now. She's not saying I'm going to murder this guy, but from an optics perspective, when a juror or jury, a panel of jurors reads that, and by the way, the question real quick, and we'll get back to this because my ADD mind, the previous question that the COE took down, is there any chance this could become a bench trial before we get into the no chance?
No chance.
You can't request that in Tallahassee?
You can. Both parties have to agree.
Okay.
I don't think they would want to agree.
So
with
the
Judge
state would
Everett.
have to agree as well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they want to do
Tim
that.
just froze up. Everyone's freezing up tonight. Tim, you back?
I don't think the defense would want to do that either.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, here's the deal with this. If I'm the state prosecutor and I'm playing these tapes, these emails, ladies and gentlemen, we're not trying Donna for how she sits in this chair here. We're not going to try her for how she acted at the airport. We want you to consider her conduct, her behavior, and what she was doing during this time period. And look at these emails. This is what her demeanor was. This was her state of mind during this key time. And look at it. Does this look like someone who was rational? Somebody that was kind? No, it's someone that was desperate, who was demented, and who was seeking her daughter to take actions and telling her to do things that were completely inconsistent with her faith and with common sense. And that's what's going to kill the defense.
Yeah.
Dan can't defeat that. He can't defeat that. He can argue that doesn't mean she's a murderer, but it certainly doesn't put her in a good light.
And speaking of that, Tim, so just back to this Nazi email real quick. It's not, this isn't a link to a murder per se, but how does it play with a jury?
Not good for the defense at all. It shows the desperation, which is what the Georgia wants to show, right? She was so desperate that she would get to this level of emails with her daughter, and that didn't work. What was the next step? Well, we'll tell you what the next step was. The next step was her son reaching out, finding someone to take care of the problem.
Moto 88, if they arrest Wendy, this is a very specific question, Tim Jansen. If they arrest Wendy and she's in jail at the time of Donna's trial, would Wendy testify in jail clothes?
That is a great question, Moto 88. That's a great question. I would think that her lawyer would probably get her to change clothes, or at least give her the same dress she had 2 other times.
Yeah,
But
it's funny because we talked about that in law school, and I remember there is case law on a defendant cannot testify in jail garb
Right.
because it's considered prejudicial to the defendant. And I know that if you've been convicted and you're testifying at trial, then you do testify in jail garb. But I
Lewis
don't know about a
Rivera, yeah.
witness, right? I don't know about, and Katie did as well. But I don't know about if you are a witness who has been arrested but not convicted. That is a interesting question.
Jared, never do anything nefarious. You look good in a suit with that lapel pin, man. Don't get yourself into trouble. I would hate to see that taken away. Jen W.
Yeah, we had session today. I had to be at the Capitol, so
You look sharp, man. I know you're
How are
boxers from.
How are our
you're-
politicians treating us these days?
oh, I can't. I'll plead the fifth.
I got to ask you, by the way, Jared. I peripherally follow some stuff, but that whole thing with the head of the Republican Party in the state of Florida, I got to talk to you about that off air. But that was kind of not. Jen W. What do you think Wendy, Jared, would think of the arrest video? And also, I think Dan was flustered towards the end of the interview. He started to stutter, etc., which is my normal cadence for speaking. But go ahead, Jared. What about that arrest video? What do you think Wendy would think since you knew her?
I think she'd be embarrassed. She's someone who very much is into looking good publicly and wanting to be thought of highly, and seeing your mother being perp walked, for what seemed like 5 miles through the airport probably would embarrass her. But then again, her brother's now been convicted of murder. Her mom is now in jail awaiting a murder trial. I don't know how much more embarrassed you could be. And what the second part of that question was?
I have no idea. My brain is
I don't remember either.
Yeah, don't worry
But
about it.
she would not be pleased about it. I can tell you that. Oh,
Yeah.
It was about Dan getting flustered
Yeah.
and stuttering. I don't know that he got flustered. I think he was trying to wrap it up a little bit. I did have someone text me and said he says the word right a lot.
He
and
does.
I did notice that.
As my mother would, she calls it a verbal tick. I have that. I say too much.
Oh,
but,
I do as well. It's one of those things.
but he does say right a lot. There's no doubt. He'll notice that if he watches it.
Yeah.
We have another soundbite. COE, please don't kill yourself, metaphorically speaking, or Space Coast. This is probably enough, but let's play this one. This is about Donna taking off from the interview with Rashbaum. Dan, I got to say, this doesn't look too good either, what they call a bad fact. From Patreon member Bobby, is it you that she is referring to? And did you have prior knowledge of her flight?
So I'm going to read what I've written here so I don't screw this up. Because I anticipated this question would come. I can't talk about what I said or didn't say because it's privileged. What I can say is that at the time Donna Adelson went to the airport, she was a free woman. What I can say is there was no indictment to anyone's knowledge. We know now there wasn't one. There was no grand jury that we knew was convened. We know now it wasn't convened till after. And there was no arrest warrant that was known of. In fact, we know the arrest warrant, I think, was just obtained hours before the flight. Again, she had offered to surrender at any point in time from 2016 on. I know that because I had made that offer. She did nothing wrong by going to the airport. Okay. Now, I cannot tell you what I advised her, what I knew, or what I didn't know. But what I can tell you for certain is that I acted within my ethical obligations. And what I can tell you for certain is that no crimes were committed by her going to the airport. With
Tim Jansen, pick it up. I mean, he had to read a script there, basically.
He did.
He's
he
playing
knew,
with fire a little bit, I think.
because he knew it was on the line, and it really looks bad because anytime you tell your client, hey, you're not indicted yet, I don't know of a warrant yet, but if I were you, I'd get the hell out of town and I'd go somewhere. That doesn't look good. It may be ethically legal because there technically isn't a warrant for her arrest, but it's not something that you would want to brag about. Something I'm sure he was glad is on a tape, because it just doesn't sound good. under the circumstances.
Gigi Stone, what's a SOT? Glad you asked. Every I don't know, every little area, law, TV, broadcast news, they all have their lingo, but SOT is sound on tape, and used since Edward R. Murrow, and so she's let me know that there is sound on tape. Thanks to Space Coast for editing and all the help getting graphics and videos up. I thanked them, and I continue to thank them. And a big thanks to Chelsea Whitaker for logging the show with time codes. This is why I always say it. This is Chelsea Whitaker right here. I hope everyone was polite, monitoring chat while doing timestamp duty was wishful thinking. We have the best guests, but a better community. We have the best community, and thank you guys so much for always
Joel,
being on top of it.
Joel,
Yes, Tim Jansen.
I wanted to clarify something, a legal issue.
Sure.
You talked about, did they read her Miranda rights when she was arrested, right?
Yeah.
She was under arrest. They have no obligation to read her Miranda unless they are trying to interrogate her or conduct an interview. Okay. They can arrest her, put cuffs on. And if she walks and she spontaneously says something, that is not suppressible. The only thing is suppressible if it's a custodial interrogation where they initiate the communication. If she just blurts out, this is insane, I didn't, whatever, that's not suppressible because they didn't initiate the conversation or the questioning.
I never knew that until right now, thanks to Professor Jansen. I think I'm going to start calling you that. Sujatha Wolf, not illegal, but was it really ethical? Jared, you are an attorney, even though you don't really practice. But what about that? I mean, him basically kind of giving her the green light to get out of Dodge. And I don't know. What do you make of all that? Do you think he's
there are rules of ethics, and then there's personal ethics. And he also said he holds himself to a higher standard than the professional rules of conduct. I would personally never, if I did practice criminal law, and Tim said it himself, would never advise a client to flee the country. The other thing he kept saying is when she went to the airport, she was doing nothing illegal. That may be true, but she was illegal. She was trying to flee the country to avoid arrest. And so there, his statement, and I'd love to see Dr. G kind of break down his body language as he read that statement, because he definitely looked uncomfortable when he was talking about
We'll get Dr. G on that. It's a great idea.
Yeah. And if he really just wanted to cut it off and not even make a big deal about it, he should have just stuck with that first part of what he said is, any conversations I had with my client were privileged and I can't talk about it. And you would have pushed back. I know you would have, but at the same time, he could have just said, privileged conversation, I'm not going to talk about it.
Mary Coppola, Francis Ford's aunt, I'm just making this up. I think Dan knew exactly what he was doing on the show. All prep work for trial to get a pulse on what the prosecution and people are thinking about the case. Very possible. Very possible. PSS, Tim Jansen, most glaring indication that he's too close to Donna Adelson is him telling her to go to the airport on a hot mic. If she's a regular client, I don't see him offering that advice. Your thoughts on this? He made it clear that it's a very unique relationship. And how so? I don't fully understand. Would you do this for any kind of typical client, Tim Jansen?
Never. I would never, and I purposely never do. I clarify. I would bring in another lawyer in my office, and I would instruct them, and I'd write a note to the file. I am instructing him. I don't know if there's a warrant, but I cannot instruct him to leave. We have reason to believe that the investigation may be continuing, but I am not in any way instructing or counseling him or inviting him to leave. You just can't do that. It'll come back to haunt you every time. Just like a politician, right? Who gets politicians in trouble? Their friends. Doing something for a friend or a family member that you wouldn't normally do for a client. And it always clouds your judgment. And you have to remember that. Think about it. Would I do this for any other client? And if the answer is no, it should be no here.
Thank you, Professor. Miss Brazy, 604. My humble opinion, I don't think Rash is a bad guy, not a bad guy. There used to be a guy in Tucson that walked around with 40 plastic bags. Interesting character. Nor do I hate him. I just disagree vehemently, and there's no mob mentality for me. I think for myself, which is a good thing these days. COE, the reaction heart is back. LOL. This is interesting. Tim, what do you make of Dan saying he would not have called the police either? Jared, you say either or either, Jared? I say either.
It really
say
depends.
either.
Sometimes I say either, and sometimes I say either. It probably depends who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to my friends in New Jersey or New York, it's probably either, and down here
Yeah.
it's probably either. I'm like a
I'm an
chameleon
either
sometimes.
guy. Go ahead, Tim.
Joel, I asked my wife when before I came on, I said, what do you think? You don't think you would call the police? I said, let me ask you this, honey. What if someone kidnapped our kid and they wanted us to give them money? Will we call the police? Absolutely. Why would you not call the police? I don't know. And I was a federal prosecutor. And trust me, I know I couldn't understand what he was saying, because as a prosecutor, he knows what the police can do. Well, when you're innocent and you're being threatened or extorted, you call the police. You don't call your friend. You don't call your mom. No, you call the police. I found that hard to believe. And I don't think if he sells that to a jury's going to buy it. I just don't.
And not to mention, you said it earlier, Tim. What about after the arrests were made?
Right.
You don't then go to the police and when Katie, who he kept saying she was not the blackmailer,
Right.
she was trying to protect me. When she was arrested, go to the police and say, you've got the whole story wrong. Katie's innocent. Let me tell you what actually happened. Never has he.
That's the car. What's that game where you stack things and you pull them out?
Jenga.
Well,
The Jenga? Yeah.
If Georgia asked Donna that when they were arrested, why didn't you call the police? And then when Georgia should say Jenga.
Yeah. And for 9 years, you've known who killed your brother-in-law, and you never told your sister. You never told your daughter.
Right.
You've let them think all along that this was just, two crazy guys. No, it does not add up.
Annalise
always
from
call the police.
Yeah, Annalise from New Zealand. I'm definitely calling the cops. Dan implied you're biased, that we're biased. It couldn't change that. I couldn't change my mind. If compelling evidence came to light, felt like Dan's mask slipped, he wanted to call us totally biased and show contempt for you regularly covering this murder case. Perhaps. I don't know. Jared, what's this? Squatchaholic Joel, the Bagman, has not been around. Oh, in Tucson. Everyone knows the Bagman in Tucson. Everyone does.
Every community has someone like we used to have King Love. I'm sure Tim remembers him.
King Love?
Oh my God, the guy who drove around on a bicycle in a G-string? King Love.
Yeah.
In a G-string. And he weighed like 300 pounds. King Love.
We have
Burger
naked
King crown on.
Yeah.
We have
and he
naked
would say, I
grandpa
love
here.
you.
They tried to arrest him for indecent
I remember.
exposure.
Yeah.
But they said the thong covered up enough.
What happened to King Love? Where is King Love?
He died. King Love passed away.
Ann Arbor has Shaky Jake. I know that from my friend Matt
Yeah.
Brode, who's the chief meteorologist in Tucson, Arizona. But
That's funny.
we've got my kids call him Naked Grandpa. He's kind of on the way to school. He's about 97 and he likes to garden in a thong. Interesting character. But I digress. Where was I? So, Jared, we'll go like another 10 minutes. How about that? Before my mind turns completely to mush. But the arrest, we watched that arrest video, and it is very glaring, conspicuous that Donna never proclaims her innocence or says, why am I being arrested? There's none of that. Is there anything to that? I mean, obviously, in kind of deference to her situation, chaotic. It's a very chaotic moment. It's craziness. You're not expecting it, but should we have expected to hear some defiance from her as to the point I just made? I didn't do this. Why are you arresting me? I'm innocent. We hear none of that.
I've gone back and forth on that, and I've watched it a couple of times. She does say, "This is insane. Why are you doing this?" There is a little bit of defiance from her. Uh, I, I don't think it was as unexpected as some people think. I'm sure the entire time she was at the airport waiting to get on that plane, she's looking over her shoulder. She's, wondering what's going to happen. I guarantee you she was sweating bullets going through TSA, because she probably thought if she's going to get stopped, it's going to be at TSA, or when you go to TSA and they check they scan your passport or your license. I guarantee she thought once she got through there, okay, maybe I'm fine. But I don't think she was as surprised as some people think. And again, Dan told her you may not make it out, so there was probably, and then when she saw Sanford, I'm sure she recognized him from the trials. So she was probably like, "Oh crap," But she's like, "Hey, I know that guy. Where do I know that guy from?"
Yeah, what a moment for Pat Sanford. Jennifer Sube or Sube, I still don't know. STS, you guys rock. I love having you on with me all day. At work, I watch. When I get home, I watch. Kudos and all the cool guests, and love the Best Trials channel. Thank you for everything. We appreciate that. Surviving the Survivor. There it is. The COE is ready to go. Let me get, I just put it back up. There we go. We have a new channel. Look at that. Looks really cool, actually. I don't know what you did with the lighting, but Surviving the Survivor Trials. It's not that easy to find yet because we're building up a following, and but it's out there, and we are covering trials. And someone just reminded me, it's Dr. G. Oh, you put a spotlight on it. It looks really cool, actually. Can you put a spotlight on our other logos? But this trial I'm interested in, and I'd be curious to hear from you guys if you are. I'm a big fight fan. So UFC heavyweight Cain Velasquez, he was a champion, is about to go on trial. He found out that his child was being sexually molested and kind of took matters into his own hands. He was arrested and incarcerated. He got out on bail finally. He ended up following the perpetrator in a truck. This guy, Cain Velasquez, could kill someone with his pinky, but he decided to fire a weapon at the truck. He hit the other person, not the perpetrator, but still, there's always a part of me. We've had Jody Plauché on, whose father, Gary, murdered his perpetrator on live TV in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, back in 1984. Very famous case. Crazy that murder was seen on live television. News cameras captured it. But I'm just curious if people would be interested in that trial. I am. Let me know. Interesting case, I think. What is this question here? Could an attorney, Tim Jansen, sign on as a client's attorney just to claim privilege to protect questionable conversations? Interesting.
Well, just remember, it's not the attorney's privilege, it's the client's privilege. A client can waive it at any time in the future. It's not the lawyer's privilege. So if that client wanted to waive the privilege and say what the lawyer said, they can do that. I don't know how that would protect him from if the client wants to disclose that privilege.
Well, I think what the question is asking is, could did
I read that wrong?
And I think Charlie had, on the calls, there was a little bit of this going on. I think what they're saying is, could someone just hire someone to be an attorney so that they can have secret conversations? And I think the answer is, yeah, if you hire an attorney, whatever you talk about is privilege. So that's
not
just
whatever.
how it works.
There's
exceptions. Yeah, correct. There are exceptions.
I agree with that response. I read it wrong. That's correct.
Yeah. A girl named Sue. Joel, I just Googled STS Trials YouTube. So we now have this channel, which is Best Guests, and the other one is Best Trials. But Kristen Grogan said, is this a different YouTube channel? Yes, it is. I looked it up. I could not find it. You're going to have to defer to the mods or there it is. She's back up, COE right there. I couldn't remember. Well, I guess I could remember that address, sort of. Bugs, I call the COE Bugs in real life, but COE Bugs. I really like that spotlight, and I'm obsessing about it, and I would like that on all our logos. So that's all. Tim Jansen, something that was interesting is Rashbaum said, I can guarantee you, because I know there's no digital forensic evidence on that cell phone that they took from Donna. Donna pulled one of these. She yanked it away. When I asked about the other devices, he wasn't so sure. Is this kind of a game of chicken? Do you think he knows for sure?
Well, let me tell you the first problem with that.
Hmm.
If he took the phone and he inspected the phone, and if there was something on it, he now has put himself in the predicament, okay? He's made himself a witness in the case. What is he going to tell Donna to do with that phone if there's something incriminating on it, right? He can't have her erase it or throw it away. He put himself in a bad position. He should not be investigating or looking through a phone to determine if there's anything bad on there. It puts him in a bad position of giving advice what to do with that phone. I don't know why he has an investigator, someone else do it. Why is he doing it? He just put himself in a bad, and to admit that, that just, I don't know. I've never done that. I would never go through my client's phone and say, oh, this is bad. What are you going to do? Say what? That tells him what? It tells him to get rid of it or delete it, right? Which you can't do. You put yourself in a bad position.
Bonnie Lee Lopez coming up, bundled up from Vermont, where it is chilly. Tim, can Rashbaum be called as a witness relating to the phone call with Donna about exiting the U.S. pronto? I asked him that in the show. Is this a real possibility?
I think it is. I think it is, depending on the whole conversation. Is the state going to play that, which you assume they are, right? Because it goes to her intent to flee. She was getting legal advice to flee. Then I would want to play it. And then I think the state could call her as a witness. And I think maybe the defense might call him as a witness. And you can't be a witness and a lawyer in the same case. You can't. Never happens. It did happen in Inherit the Wind, the Scopes Monkey trial, where Clarence Darrow cross-examined because the judge wouldn't allow him to call his experts. They called Brady to the stand and he cross-examined him. That's the only case I've ever heard where a lawyer was a witness in the same case. So
I was in that play, I think freshman year of high school, and I just stood there like an idiot on stage for 4 nights. Blessings always. Do you honestly think the prosecution has enough, this is for you, Jared, for a conviction on Wendy without someone flipping on her? What do you think?
I would say, as of right now, that if they thought they had all the evidence that they needed to convict her, she probably would have been arrested right now. But I do believe that they have evidence to convict her. Again, what I believe and what 12 jurors of her peers believe could be two totally different things. That said, I think we don't know all the evidence that they have on Wendy. What we have found, and y'all have talked about it on this, sorry, I said y'all, but people have talked about it on this channel for over a year, is the prosecution in this case, the state attorney's office has been doing this now they've been investigating for 9 years. They've been litigating this case. I believe the first trial was in 2019. So we're now on 5 years of trials. They know what they're doing. And they know, even if they have enough evidence to arrest her and convict her, they know why they haven't done it yet. They're calculated. As we like to say in politics, they're playing 4D chess while a lot of others are playing checkers. So they know what they're doing. And I have full faith in Georgia Kappelman, in Jack Campbell. That office knows what they're doing.
Yannette Gomez, I have no idea the answer to this, but I'm glad you asked. Whatever happened with Charlie and Katie's arrest video? It's got to be out there. If anyone knows or has the answer or whatever, let me know. Artie brings up a good point. He said not on the phone, or he said on the phone, but on the phone doesn't mean in the cloud. That's a whole new brave world, which I don't understand. Bugs isn't Bugs Bunny. Bugs isn't, she has big, beautiful eyes, like bug eyes, and it just sort of, it's stuck. And everyone in her family calls her, well, not everyone, but everyone I know calls her Bugs now. I've been calling her that for.
Does she like that? Is she okay with that?
It's past the point of no return, by the way. So I don't know. I'll have to ask her when I get home. But that's coming from the woman who 5 years into our marriage comes home one night and says, a friend of mine told me you're sort of good looking. Never really noticed before. And that was 5 years into our marriage. I was like, wow, thank you. I feel so loved. Freedom Forecaster. I have no idea what this question is. Why did they take Donna's blue bag off of her shoulder and give it to Harvey and not look through it to see if there was evidence in the bag, as in another phone or an iPad? They went back and got search warrants. That's a great question. Tim Jansen, they gave that bag to Harvey. Why?
Yeah, they probably had an intention. They wanted to get phone or computers to see if she had on the phone made any communications about her fleeing, or any conversations with Wendy about fleeing or anything like that. They probably didn't think anything in the bag. The bag wasn't, well, it was on her shoulder, but it was taken off. So they just handed it to the husband.
Larry McConnon, will Donna and Harvey get their room deposit back from their Vietnam hotelier? Someone asked me if they're getting a refund.
Depends if it's within the cancellation process, right?
I don't know. If Harvey can't get an Uber to get home, I doubt he's getting a refund.
Right?
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's probably the least of their worries right now. Although I did hear, actually, I'm not going to say what it is, but I did hear a very sad story relating to the Adelsons, and sort of being in a desperate spot for money. And I don't know if it's 1,000% true, but some good sources. So I'll just leave it at that. And if I get more information that I can share, I will. Look at this from Angela. This brings a warm, fuzzy feeling. Joel is a terrific host, and the chemistry of these three guests is great. They're playing live jazz, and that's only because Tim and Jared are awesome. Anytime both these guys are on, people tune in and enjoy tuning in. Tim Jansen. I read this to Dan Rashbaum. This was a question someone sent in, and for the life of me, I can't remember who, so I apologize. But if Charlie knew for so long that there was even a possibility that he'd be arrested, and he said so repeatedly in jail calls, why wouldn't he first try to cooperate with law enforcement to catch all the real bad guys? Why wait and gamble on a trial, especially after seeing 3 people convicted? It's a big problem.
It was, and it was. And I think Georgia asked him the same thing on the stand. I think she cross-examined him and asked him, why didn't you come forward with this extortion after these people were arrested? I don't recall what his response was, but the most obvious thing that defeats the whole defense is just a killer. And I don't think Dan keeps realizing this. One, no one's going to believe Lewis and Sigfredo could pull this off. No one's going to believe they had the money or the wherewithal to do it. I mean, we know the first time they came up there and they shot the gun in the car, almost shot each other, right? And then secondly, after they did the crime and they got arrested, why didn't they come forward? What prevented them, Donna or Charlie, from coming forward? They would have absolved themselves. They would have protected them. They would have been able to move on. They wouldn't have to talk in code anymore. No, that's not what happened, because that defense had not been created yet. That was created later after Charlie was arrested.
Coming from a defense attorney. Mrs. Jim Morrison, who's probably doing pretty well off the licensing of his image and his music, I imagine. Is Wendy really dating an officer? I've seen photos of him. He looks like a police officer. On the hot mic, the day after Charlie's arrest, and Wendy has nothing to do with the crime. Wendy was at the kind of, okay. Yeah, I think, my question to you, Jared, what didn't I ask that I should have? How about that for a question?
I mean, in the limited time that you had with him, I think you got a lot of good questions in there. I think there was a lot to pick apart. Probably going to have to go back and watch it again to see what I would have asked him. One other thing that you did ask him that I wanted to comment on was about, you brought up the Ben Graber stuff, Dr. Graber, former state representative Graber. For full disclosure, those of us, I've talked about graduating high school with Charlie. I graduated high school with Dr. Graber's daughter as well. She was in our class. But Dan mentioned, I would hope that if I were in some sort of trouble, that my good friends would come to my defense as well. It's come out the Grabers and the Adelsons hadn't talked for 20 years. So there's still to this day, and I can't figure it out. I don't have a relationship with his daughter other than, like I said, I graduated high school with her, but I haven't talked to her in Lord knows how long. I don't know why someone who has not been friends with a family for 20 years would all of a sudden come to their defense. There is something there. I hope it comes out. I hope we find out, because I am super intrigued by that for several reasons. One, again, graduating with the daughter, but being in politics and knowing who Ben Graber was when he was up here as a state representative. And there's something there. I just want to know what it is. So I'm glad you asked that. We didn't get a satisfying answer, but I found it very interesting how Dan said, I'd hope my friends would come to my defense. Well, yeah, I would hope my good friends would come to my defense, but someone I haven't talked to in 20 years, why are they coming out of the woodwork?
When he said that too, I wanted to be like, I'd like my parents and my sister to come to my defense
Yeah,
if I was
absolutely
on trial for murder.
And also them not coming to the trial, not being their choice. Well, it's definitely their choice.
Mhm.
They had a conscious decision whether they could or couldn't. Maybe they were advised not to, but that doesn't make it not their choice.
100%. He mentioned the fact that Wendy was a witness, so she couldn't be in the gallery.
Well,
that
that's
I agree with.
True.
Yeah.
After she testified, she could
After she testified, she could have stayed. Yeah.
The optics would have been bad, and I'm sure John would not have
Right.
let her stay, but that was not true. She could have stayed after she testified.
Teresa, you did not ask about the 5K TV. I wanted to kind of get more current too, not that I'm making excuses. Gloria here with an H. STS is my hobby. I love it here. Best coverage. Love to be part of the nation. Genius channel. Love Tim for that. You are now a friend of the show, Gloria. Tim, what did I not ask that I should have asked? Thank you.
I think, Joel, you did an outstanding job as a journalist with Rashbaum. I think you were fair. I think you called him on things that were clear. I think you basically said his trial was a catastrophe, which was pretty funny. He thought it was a great success. But then he threw points out. You called him on him. And then you were very nice to him and said, yeah, but I thought you did a great job as a journalist. And anybody expects you not to do that interview, you're a journalist first, right? You're not a lawyer, you're a journalist. And I thought you handled it well. I think you gave him an opportunity to speak. I think you called him on things when you needed to. And I think the questions were great.
Thank you, Tim. Coming from you, that means quite a bit, actually. Jared Ross. He's now a master friend of the show, a best guest, of course. He is a high school acquaintance. He graduated with Charlie Adelson, 1985. Longtime friend of
1995. Whoa.
What did I?
You said 85.
No, I think I just mumbled 95. 95. Longtime friend of Danny and Wendy, two-time graduate of FSU undergrad and also the law school. Also a Star Wars fanatic. Jared, has Wendy befriended you on Facebook yet? And your final thoughts?
I just checked. No, she hasn't. But final thoughts again is I really appreciate being on here, being able to provide a little bit of insight into what's going on and just thoughts on things. Again, keep the Markels in your thoughts and in your prayers, especially the young man who just had his bar mitzvah. I know there were a lot of comments on the internet about the bar mitzvah. At the end of the day, as someone who has been through that process a long time ago, but been through it, that is a rite of passage and something that should be celebrated and remembered. I can tell you all about mine still, even though it's been over 30 years. So kudos to him for reaching that milestone. I wish that his father could have been there. And I wish his whole family could have been there under better circumstances, because this did not have to end how it did. They could have gotten divorced. They could have gone their separate ways. She could have raised the boys in Tallahassee. and they would have been loved and taken care of in a great community. And now they're dealing with this. And let me tell you, it's going to be very difficult for them for the rest of their days. So keep them in your thoughts and make sure that you lift them up in any way that you can.
I love that you always say that. Asian American Legal Focus, our good friend Judy Tsang, who's a best guest and an attorney. Can Jared share his last memory, his final memory of Dan Markel?
Well, my final memory is waking up on that Saturday morning to a Facebook post from a good friend, to Danny saying, "I can't believe you're gone." And that's my last memory, but my last memory of being with Danny, gosh, it's been over 10 years, because it was at least 6 or 7 months before he passed. But he actually reached out to me. It would have been October of 2013. His birthday was October 9th. Mine's October 10th. And he just reached out to me and always said, "Happy birthday, almost birthday twin." And that's kind of the guy he was, and just a memory that I always had. And every October 9th comes along and, you get those Facebook notifications of whose birthday it is. And even though he doesn't show up anymore, he does have a memorial page on Facebook, but it doesn't show up as his birthday anymore. I always remember that October 9th is his birthday, and just, think about him and make sure, to think a good thought about him.
Nancy Moon Rush, honestly don't know if I can handle Dateline. Spin tomorrow, mainstream media. That's why you got to be at STS. Is never for the actual truth. Dennis Murphy, who's a best guest, and I've become friends with, the correspondent for Dateline. He's a stand-up guy. He's going to write that episode. He's a journalist. I spoke at that JAFCO event with him, and I have nothing but massive respect for Dennis Murphy, who I have to reach out to. Programming note, new. STS trial channel has Michelle Troconis, the Michelle Troconis trial all day. Then Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, live Dateline. By the way, tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. It's time for Great Scott. It's your true crime Phil with America's most respected detective, Phil Waters, and Scott Duffy, formerly of the FBI. I'm doing that at 12:30. And as former law enforcement, they're going to analyze the Donna Adelson arrest video, and we're going to talk true crime stories of the week. But tomorrow night, you see it here. For those who don't know, who've been living under a rock, R. Timothy Jansen, famed Tallahassee defense attorney, a partner in the firm Jansen Davis that bears his name. He spent 5 years as a federal prosecutor. Tim, your final thoughts on this momentous evening?
It was an interesting time, an interesting day. We got a little light from Dan what their defense is going to be. It's an equal defense between him and Alex. We know now that Donna's probably going to testify, and it should be interesting to see how he keeps saying this is a completely different trial from Charlie's. It may be, but I think we're going to get the same verdict.
Yeah. There you have it, folks. Same verdict anticipated by Tim Jansen in the trial, which is yet to take place, of Donna Sue Adelson. She's in court Monday morning, 10:15. I don't know if she's in court, but you get the idea. There's a case hearing. Tim Jansen hopefully will hop on with us for analysis. At the very least, it'll be just little old me, but hopefully Tim will be there. And again, tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, regular show. And then at 9 o'clock, it is a watch party for YouTube and Patreon members. Until then, love you, America. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe. Help us get to 100K. That's the COE asking, not me. That's just a number. We want people watching, and we're getting people watching. So thank you all. Love you, Tallahassee. Justice for Dan Markel.